So, welcome everybody. We're going to be talking about what is new for developers in 6.4 today. Caveat, there's a lot in 6.4. We only have an hour, and we're going to kind of talk about what we thought was interesting with what's new for developers. And when we talk about developers, we're talking about a broad spectrum. People who are building themes, theme developers, people who are building plugins. So when we say developers, we kind of are casting a wide net when we say that term. My name is Nick Diego. I'm a developer advocate sponsored by Automatic, and I'm joined by Justin Tadlock and Ryan Welcher, who are also developer advocates sponsored by Automatic. And what we're going to do is we kind of have like a list of things that, again, we think are kind of interesting coming in 6.4. And we're going to kind of talk through a few different topics. And hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of, what's coming in this next release. This 6.4 release was a bit of a shorter timeline than, say, 6.3. So if you were to compare the two side by side, there's a little bit less in 6.4 than we may have seen in 6.3. But that doesn't mean this release isn't going to be full of stuff. One of the biggest new things coming in 6.4 is the brand new theme for WordPress this year, 2024, which we're all really excited about. And we actually are going to have next month a session with some of the folks that helped build 2024 and talk a little bit more about that. But that will be posted in the future. So for those who aren't familiar with the 6.4 timeline, right now we're in the beta process. So there'll be, I think, the last beta next week. And the official release is going to be in the beginning of November, on November 7th. So we still have a little bit of time before the final release, but things are starting to tighten up, which is why we wanted to host this now to get everybody up to speed with things. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with Justin, who's going to go over a few things. And what we're doing right now is we're pulling from Anne McCarthy's source of truth. So every year, not every year, but every release, for the last few, she's posted a source of truth, which I'm going to put in the chat. Oh, Justin beat me to it. And this is like a very broad overview of everything that's happening in 6.4. Next week on Tuesday, I believe, will be like the official field guide that will go out to plugin and theme developers to get folks ready for the next release. So that will be coming out next week. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through the source of truth that Anne put together and talk about a few things. One more link to start before we really dive in is, I mentioned the 2024 theme. This is a fun resource. This is the live demo site for 2024. So if you want to check it out, have that on hand. And if my demo, and I think Justin's as well, uses the 2024 theme. So if you want to get it early and test it out early, I just posted the GitHub link for that as well. All right, so let's kick it over to Justin and see what he thinks is interesting for developers in this next release.
Yeah, I think actually 2024 is in the WordPress beta now too, so I don't think you need to get it from GitHub. Yeah, so let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. And of course, I have to move a few things around so I can see what I'm doing. All right. So we're going to talk about patterns a little bit, some of the new features. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions as we go along. You can raise your hand or just jump in and ask me anything as we go. So one of the new things we're going to talk about is, well, as first, I've just got a pattern set up right here. And I don't know which version this came in, but you can create a pattern directly from the, I'm sorry, my screen, I've got to move my thing going around on my screen a bit. Okay. All right, so you can create a pattern directly from, the post editor, the page editor, wherever. So let's just go ahead and say that this is called hero quote. And what's cool in 6.4 is you can actually add categories here. Let's add there's a banner category. So let's add this, and we're also going to save this as a sync pattern, which sync patterns, if you're unaware, if you make changes to them, they're reflected across your entire site. And there was an issue with sync patterns in 6.3 that is now fixed in 6.4, which we'll get to. But let's go ahead and save this pattern. I'll create one. And if we just go to our, we can actually look at this pattern now is actually saved in my patterns under in the patterns library. Okay, so that's kind of cool. I forgot what I was going to say about sync patterns. Okay, I remember now. Sorry, my mind got off track a bit. All right, so if we're creating a new page, actually let me just reload that. And all right, the neat thing about sync patterns now is, let's say you have like if it was a wide or a full width, previously in 6.3, because it was synced and the way it worked under the hood, it would have looked like this, like completely squished up, because it had like an internal wrapper. But now it doesn't. It works correctly everywhere, which is a great thing. I know that's kind of annoyed me to the point where I didn't even want to use sync patterns at all before. Let me see. One of the other neat features coming along in this release is you can actually import and export your patterns directly from the administration interface. And that it is a JSON file, so it's not exported as like a PHP file that you would manage in your theme. So but you can upload it to, a client site or something like that, or your own website quickly. I was trying to remember all the other pattern things. Did we have anything else?
Well, I just wanted to touch on the fact that there was a question here: are these patterns stored in the database? Which they are, but the exporting and importing makes it pretty handy to use those elsewhere if you want to. So
yeah, for me, the import and exporting thing is going to make, I feel like that's more of a user feature, more so than a developer feature. There are some tools. If any of you joined there was a whole hangout earlier today, and there was a great discussion around developer tooling for patterns, like how can we take these patterns and like save them to the disk in our theme. And I don't think that recording is live yet, but maybe it should be up on WordPress TV at some point. So definitely check that out. That was a great discussion. So yeah, there's some missing developer features that I think we really need around patterns.
And I want to touch on one thing. So the issue before where you had a synced pattern that couldn't adapt to wide and full, there is some work being done around partially synced patterns. And so this is the concept of a pattern where part of it is synced. So for example, like the design, the layout could be synced, meaning if you duplicated it, that would carry over, but the content might be editable by the user. So you could have a partially synced pattern. Maybe it's a call to action, or maybe it's a header, whatever. Partially synced patterns are really useful in the context of agencies and working with clients and that sort of thing. This simple little blocker where the width and full width wouldn't be respected would have carried over to partially synced patterns, which are being worked on for future WordPress releases. So the fact that this was fixed, it seems really small, but it unblocks a lot of work with patterns that we may be seeing in the future. So it seems small, but like for those that have been dealing with it, it's a very a big thing. And it took a little bit of heroics to get fixed, which was great to see in 6.4.
Yeah. I had to turn my screen sharing off for a minute to look at notes. Okay. There was one other thing that's kind of neat with patterns in this release, especially if you have a lot of patterns. So let's get that off the screen. Sorry. And we have pagination in the inserter. So that's just kind of a neat UI thing and is very welcome. And I know I showed creating a pattern directly from the post editor, but you can also create the same patterns directly from the site editor. So, and you can add categories, mark synced or unsynced, and it's the same process pretty much from anywhere. I know as someone who designs themes, I kind of like to build within the post and page editor, and so I do prefer, like, clicking in the toolbar and doing it quickly. But yeah. All right. Do we have any? I'm looking at the chat now. Do we have any other questions around patterns, though?
Our pattern category is a new taxonomy in WordPress, and so thank you for Darren for chiming in. Yeah, so there'll be WP_pattern_category.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, there's plenty of work going toward patterns. There's still more to come. That's one of my the things I find most exciting about building WordPress themes today.
Yeah, patterns is a space that feels like it's had a lot of exploration, but there's even so much more that can be done there. All right, so is it my turn, Dustin?
Yeah, we can just jump over to the next thing.
Sweet. If anybody has any questions, or wants to discuss more on any of these topics, please feel free to chime in and speak up and stop us. And, we're here to just talk about the new features in WordPress 6.4. But if there are none, I will jump into the next topic. So let me share my screen here. All right. So this is a pretty sandbox, if I may say so myself, that I have up and running. And this is running 6.4, and this is running the new 2024 theme. So I want to talk about two things. One is super small, and one is much more developer-y than we have talked about so far. The first thing is, I don't know how many of us, I'm sure I've done it myself. I know everyone on our team has done it. If you want to add a button to the navigation menu on a site, you had to add a link, you had to add probably a custom class and add some style to it to make it look like a button, right? Well, you can finally add buttons to navigation. So this is much more theme developer-y, but when you're building themes now and you're designing things, you can now put buttons in navigation. And so let's take a quick look at that. Very small quality of life change, but will make things much easier for everybody. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add page, and then you can either use the transform to transform into a button. So we can do like that. Or what I could do now is from the inserter, if I go to blocks, normally so the navigation block restricts the types of blocks that can be put inside of it. Before buttons was not there. Now it is. So very simple little thing, but now you can all go out and remove all those custom classes from your theme and just use the native buttons block, which is very nice. The next thing I wanted to talk about is a feature that is called Block Hooks. for those following along with the 6.4 release, you may have seen some conversation around this. And let me just pull up. So I'm actually working on the developer note for this now. It will be out by the time the field guide goes live next week. But I wanted to do like a little bit of a preview around what block hooks are, kind of the state of the development around block hooks and what they might look like in the future, because I'm looking at this implementation in 6.4 as kind of like an initial implementation that, based on how developers react to it, based on how people use it and the feedback that's received, it will be a lot more powerful in the future. So I don't want to diminish the feature with all my caveats, but it is important to recognize that this is a functionality that is brand new and is very narrow in scope and can get, hopefully will be much more powerful in the future. So let me just drop this link in the chat here. So block hooks, the documentation for it, like I said, the developer note's being written right now, but there is some documentation so far. Block hooks can be, let me try to explain block hooks. So all of us are probably familiar with hooks and filters in WordPress. Block hooks are, you are hooking a block into a template part or pattern based on the context. So for example, if we looked at this page and I wanted to hook in, let's use the example of like e-commerce, say WooCommerce or something like that. Let's say that I wanted to hook in the mini cart in WooCommerce, for example, and I wanted to put it in the header after the navigation. So in theory, I could say I want to hook the mini cart block after the navigation block. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, you may be asking, well, I could just come in here and I could add the mini, so I could go after navigation in my row here, and I could add the mini cart block. You know, I could do that, right? Well, that requires going into the editor. What if you had, well, not WooCommerce, but let's say that you built a plugin or you built some sort of extension and it included blocks. And when someone installs that plugin or whatever, you wanted that block to be put in a certain spot. One of the thoughts I was thinking about is, some of you may be familiar with, if you're logged in on a lot of old themes, on a post, on the bottom, it would say like edit, right? Well, we don't have that in block themes, but imagine there was a block that was the edit block or something like that. So when someone installed that block plugin on their post template, that block would automatically get inserted. And so you wouldn't have to go into the editor and the site editor and go to, go to post content, add it. It would just automatically get hooked in. There's a lot of different use cases around why this functionality might be useful in different contexts, but that's kind of the idea. You're hooking this block, for example, in this case, the mini cart block, after or before or inside first child, last child. You're hooking into other, in relation to other blocks, and you're doing it in templates and template parts and patterns. And I'm going to show some code for this. But when you start thinking about all the different things that you could do with hooks, it's kind of endless. And so when I talked about the narrow scope of this feature, it's because you can't do as much as maybe your mind would think with this current feature. It's quite narrow, but it may lead to even more functionality in the future. The best way to explain it is just to see the code. So I'm going to hop over here, and I have, this is 2024. I have an example here. So there is a plugin. Let me just grab the link real quick. That was created. It's a very simple plugin. Drop it in the chat. And it creates a block, a like block. And this is the GitHub repo. I just put it in the chat. And it's just it's just for demonstration purposes. But if we take a look at this block, let me zoom in a little bit here. If we go over to the block.json file of this like button, so this is the block.json file, which handles a lot of the block itself. Down here, you'll see that there's the specification for block hooks. And it says core post content after core comment template last child. What this is saying is saying, take my block, which is a like block, has a little heart, and you can click it and it likes it. I want you to add this block after wherever you find the post content block in a template part, or a pattern. This is when you use this functionality in block.json is unconditional. It just, wherever it finds a post content block or wherever it finds a comment template block, it is going to add it with these contexts. This can be after, before, last child, or first child. Last child and first child only work with blocks that have children blocks, like containers. So, if you have a headings block, there's no first, last child, right? So it only works with containers. And then the other important caveat, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you, this will all be in the dev note, but this only works on unedited, unmodified templates and template parts. And the reason for that is because if a user has gone in and they've customized their templates and template parts, this is like a safeguard. You don't want to start allowing them to insert content that's unexpected. So if you have a customized template and template part, this functionality won't actually hook in the block. But if it's unmodified, then it will. So we can see that in practice. But let me save this right now. And when we come over to, let me go to a simpler page here. Let's go to, oops, I am in the site editor. That's why this is. If we go to a blank page, you can see that there's this little like button here. And that is because I've said post content after. Let's move this to before. Save. You can see that it went away, and now it's up here. And again, this page template that was provided by 2024, I have not modified. It is just what came with the theme. And that is why this is working right now. We can also take a look at the comment template. So the comment template only right now exists in the posts. So again, the comment, the posts page, or the single template, includes the post content block. That's where we're seeing our like button here. And then if we come down here, I have similarly the post comments block that is controlling all of this. And that's why we're seeing the like button there. And if I do first child, refresh, and now it's up here. So it's kind of neat. It's really cool, but this is unconditional, right? So in order to capture the conditional nature, there was a filter that has been introduced in 6.4. There is no documentation right now for this. That will be solved with the dev note and in subsequent work before the release of 6.4. So the filter introduces what's called conditional block hooking. That's not the official term, but that's the best way to describe it. So if we come over here to our file here, I just put this right in the root folder, root file for the block. I have this filter, and it's called hooked block types. This filter accepts four things. It accepts an array of hooked blocks, a position, an anchor block, and context. So if we compare this to block.json, the block.json implementation, position and anchor block are what we see here. So our position is here. This is our anchor block. The great thing about the filter is that we can determine hooked. So when you have it in block.json, it's hooking the block that block.json is representing, right? The filter allows you to hook anything, which is pretty cool. The context is the context of the template, a template part, or a pattern. Again, this only works in templates, template parts, and patterns. I'm going to jump over this because it's very technical. Template parts return objects. Patterns return arrays. So here I'm just checking to make sure this is an object, which means it's a template or a template part. And then let's take a look at this conditional. What I'm doing is I'm saying whenever there's a post title, I want to add this block before, but now you can take a look at context and start to determine where this block gets positioned, what template this block gets added to. So here we only want this to appear for the single template. Now you might be wondering, what is this content object? Well, as I was exploring this, the best way is just to echo out the context and just take a look at it. But if we look down here, we can see when we have a template object for a template, it gives us the type, the theme, the page, the ID, all sorts of information about that template. Similar, we have the same thing for template part, gives you the name of it. Really cool is the area. So for example, if you have a template part for headers and footers, and you can register custom template areas, you can specify that here. Patterns are arrays. And so here you get the slug. So if you wanted to hook in a block for a specific pattern, you can do that. And then you have all the other additional information about that pattern. But what we're doing here is we're saying whenever there's a post title, hook my block before the post title in the context of just a single template, which is the post template. So we're going to turn this off. And now I picked a random block. Again, you can pick anything, any block that exists. We have core log in, log out. And when we come up here and we refresh, now we have our log out button that got hooked in here. Really quick again, let's do a different one. So now we're saying core navigation. After navigation, I want to hook in the context of a header. So this has to be a template part that has the context area of header. Hook in my mini cart. So we know that this is rendered by a template part with the area header. Now when I refresh, now I have my mini cart. So it's pretty cool, right? But once you start using it, you'll start to come up with some caveats like, well, this is only rendering the default instance of the block. Blocks have attributes, blocks have custom classes, so on and so forth. So there's already some work being done. So instead of just passing just the name of the block that you want to hook, you could pass a block object in array form. So you could say, I want the login, log out, and I want the typography to be large, and I want it to be, have whatever set of attributes that block supports, because that would make it even more robust. Because right now, all we're able to do is just hook the default instance of that block. But again, I'll stop there. I know I've thrown a lot at everybody, but it is a very cool feature. The functionality is fairly limited right now, and as we move forward towards 6.5, expect this to become far more robust. And I encourage everybody to try it out.
Yeah, we do have a few questions here in the chat. Too, I actually don't know the answer to this. Can third-party blocks be added to the allowed list for navigation?
No. That unfortunately is not. No, that is not possible right now. There's some discussion around that, but
yeah, so you might have to hook in after or before, and the navigation in that case.
And that's one of the caveats is that, like, I know the context of the template part, but I can't say, and I know the context of the navigation, but I can't say, like, if you have like a bunch of nested content, you can't say hook it after the second group or the third group. Like, you don't have that level of context. There's an exploration on how to get more context about where the block is. So you will run into some limitations around that for sure. We did have a question about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say we had a question about whether there's an error message if the hook is unable to be added due to the template having already been edited, or will it just fail silently?
It will fail silently, and that is part of the idea or a question. Like, so I didn't show this, but so I've hooked this in, right? If I go to edit the site, it's not just on the front end. This is in the back end too. You can see that the mini cart is here as well. And I can move it around, right? So that's kind of the beauty of this, because you can hook in stuff, but the user still has full power to move it around. It's just a block like anything before. Like right now, this was hooked in using the block hooks, but I can still move this around. And then I can save it. again, as soon as I save this, the blocks remain, but the block hook, the automatic hooking functionality stops working because this template has been edited now. And the user has said, well, I actually don't want the like button here. I want it up here or whatever. And user preference trumps the hook functionality. But, oh, sorry, I didn't answer that question. But one thought is that if a block is trying to be hooked in, but it can't because it's being edited, maybe there's something like in the editor that would say, I don't know, there are a couple blocks trying to hook in and they can't. Some sort of indicator in the editor that there is potentially hookable blocks, but that's currently being explored.
Question about your source code, if it's available.
So
Or
the
could be
examples,
available.
yeah, the examples that I have here will be in the dev note. So expect that to be published like Monday or Tuesday. So,
And Jerry's got a question about is there a plan to expose some UI to do this?
Shameless, I did not talk about the UI. My apologies. So there is a little bit of UI. And so if we come, let me just see if I can get it here. All right. So okay. Need to remember how this is done. Okay.
We're learning right along with you, with everyone else.
So the where are we comments? Okay, perfect. Okay, so I hooked in the like button into the comment template. So if we come back over here, I did this in the block.json. So I have hooked in the block hooks inside of the comment template block. So if I come over here to comment template, you'll notice over here that there's this little new sidebar item that says plugins, and then this is just the name of that plugin, and then our little like button. So this is it's a pretty minimalistic, and it only applies when a block is hooked inside of another block. So we can see here that the the comment template is the first. I want to hook the like button as the first child of the comment template. So it's pretty neat because you can just, as a user, you could come in here. Oh, you can see that this was hooked in, and I could turn it off if I wanted to. That UI is kind of currently being explored on how to make it better for the user in terms of editing their site and interacting with these hooked blocks. But from a developer standpoint, that is something that will just be, as it's being developed, the UI will just be there. There is no UI to create hooked blocks. That is all done either in the block.json method, which is again unconditional, it just applies to everything, or using the filter as you would with other filters in WordPress. But again, this is, I encourage people to test it out and explore with it. It's really good in very narrow situations right now, and we expect it to get bigger than that. But again, the developer note will be out next week. All right. So I guess we will kick it over to Ryan. Or wait, who's next? Sorry, Justin, I think maybe you're next.
Justin got one in there, yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be a relatively quick one because this about the group block. I'm gonna just link the ticket here in the chat, but we'll go ahead and share screen. Okay. So if you're a theme author, this should be like pretty exciting. Now we can the group blocks support background images for, I know a ton of people have asked for something like this, but you can do it straight through the UI. There's a new background image control, and of course you can design your groups however you want. I know like we've had this ability with the cover block, but the cover block has a very specific use case, I think, and the group block it's very different, of course. I'm just excited that we can add background images. Finally, I don't really have a ton of examples yet. I just wanted to show how that was done. And of course, you can add that in your theme templates or in your patterns. But yeah, check out the ticket and the link if you want to read more into the details of that. But yeah, just a cool new feature for theme authors and users too.
Yeah, it's not going to have as much functionality as you might have with like the cover block right now,
Yeah.
but in some cases it has more functionality because it has all the functionality of group blocks, right? So it's kind of, you got to kind of pick and choose with the correct use case there, but it's very handy.
Yeah, yeah, you just have to pick which one you need for the situation. There have been a ton of times I've needed that I've had to take the cover block and just kind of make it do things that it really wasn't meant to do. A lot of times that was custom CSS and things where I really just needed it on the group block instead of the cover. So really excited about doing that, and I want to explore some patterns here pretty soon. But yeah, we can kick it on over to Ryan now. Who, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm going to talk about, let me just, my sharing here. Sorry. I'm going to share this one. I think this is the right one. Are you seeing the GitHub issue right there?
Yep.
It's like my first day with sharing. Sorry. So we're gonna talk. I'm going to talk about it's a new hook that's been made public, which is pretty exciting for block developers. It's called Use Block Editing Mode, and basically what it allows you to do is control the editing mode of a block. So for example, I have really ugly design. You'll notice my demos are always super ugly, and Justin's are always super beautiful, and Nick's are always great as well. Mine just look horrible because I'm whatever, not a designer. But the idea is that you can basically you can call this hook, and if I can find the chat, I will drop the link. Maybe where's the chat? There's the chat. Here's the documentation for it. And so it is a hook that accepts basically three modes. We have disabled, which means you can't do anything to the block. You can't edit it. You can't move it. There's content only, which means that you can't move the block or delete the block, but you can edit the content. And then there's the default state, which is you can do all the things to it. And you might be wondering, why is this so cool? It's because you now have the ability inside of your block to contextually change how the block is allowed to be edited. So for example, I have some very contrived examples here, but this is these little, I guess that's blue blocks are sort of my demo block. It's called block editing mode. So for this one, I have no restrictions. I can move it. I can edit it. I can make all kinds of changes, but I've written some code to make it so if this block appears after a paragraph block, I can't do anything to it. So I'm clicking on this. I can't edit it. I can't do anything. But if I were to say move this block and then put it below it, now I have full edit control. Like I want with it. In this context, I have, if this block is a child of a group block, so it has a parent. So anytime this block appears inside an inner block instance, so a group block, cover block, anytime it's a child, you can edit the content, but you can't move it. And so those are basically the three states. And this becomes really powerful when you have a block that you want to be able to use on its own. But if it's put inside a pattern, for example, you may want to control that. So I've actually created a pattern right here. And so this is a pattern with nested content. So when this is inserted, I can edit this content of this custom block, but as you can see, I can't move it. So it becomes very, very powerful in that sense. This is the GitHub issue where all the stuff was talked about. And this is sort of how, this is the code that I've written to do this. So I'm doing, I'll talk us through it. So this is the edit.js file of a custom block. I'm importing use block editing mode from the block editor package. I'm just getting some information here about the blocks, indexes, and things like that. Now I have some sort of ugly contrived code about how we're going to handle the mode. So if the mode, it's going to be set to default by default. And then if it's got basically a parent, this block has a parent, we're going to set the mode to content only. And then I'm going to, if this is an ugly way of saying, if the block before this block is a core paragraph block, then we're going to set it to disabled, and then we're going to pass it use editing mode. We're going to pass it the mode that we've set, and that's basically how that works. Yeah, that was a pretty quick demo. So it's pretty, it can be very, very powerful. Obviously my examples are pretty contrived, but there could be some really powerful use cases where when you insert blocks, and depending on what's going on around the block, depending on what's happening within the global state of the block editor, you could have things get blocked or locked or unlocked or moved or whatever you want to do there. Yeah, so I shared that, shared this, shared the code. Oh, I have a gist for this code if you're interested in having a look at it. As I said, it's pretty contrived, but it is possible to do some really cool things. Is there a question in there?
So
sorry,
go
go ahead.
There's a question around is if you have a rich text component, can you lock editing? So basically lock editing of the content, but still allow like font size, color, formatting, and so on and so forth. So it's the opposite of content only, like it's design only. Like you can't change the content, but like you can change like formatting of like font size and typography.
You know what? That's something I actually haven't tested. That is interesting. Let me see.
I don't think it's one of the modes, so I don't think so.
No, so I don't think it affects the controls. But if you bear with me 1 second, I might be able to. Nothing like coding live. Let's see. Sorry, bear with 1 sec. Let me see if I can make a change here to this block and see what happens. Content. That one. You can't see what I'm doing behind the scenes, but I'm clicking madly and trying to write some stuff here. So sports.
Well,
say what color.
While Ryan is doing that, I want to call out the fact that like if you're writing a bunch of custom blocks for like client work, this can be real. Like if you're building a block that's like for mass distribution, like a block that does one thing and anybody can use it anywhere, this might not be that relevant. But if you're building custom blocks for clients that are using very specific use cases, this gives you so much power over like how those blocks are implemented, because you can write really complicated conditions around where something can be content editable and where it can be locked down. So I just wanted to highlight that it's a great way to curate the editor experience, especially if you're building custom blocks in like a client setting.
Yeah. So I just tested that. Thanks for that, Nick. That's and it doesn't look like well when it's disabled, you can't select the block. So by not being able to select the block, you can't get access to the controls anyways. In the context of just changing the content, you can see that there are no controls here. This block is the one that's got no restrictions, so it's the default, and we have I just added 2 color controls, but this is done through block supports. So to answer the question, no. There's no way of saying lock the content but give me design. There's only 3 current options. It's not a bad idea, but I just don't know if that's on the roadmap or not.
Actually, I do want to think more about this though, is that because this is functionality you're building into your block, you could kind of mock it anyway, because you could basically like using those same conditions, you could like hide inspector controls and like do all sorts of stuff there. At that point, you're just doing like it's a custom block. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
so.
You are kind of like you could potentially, and we don't have time for me to build this out real quick, but you could add custom controls like what I was saying, and it would appear in the inspector as long as you can as long as you can select the block, you can get access to the block inspector controls. So there'd be a way of doing it, but then you're sort of reinventing how
Yeah.
everything that block supports does, and I wouldn't recommend doing this. No, there is not a UI for this. It all needs to be done in code. Well, actually, there is technically a UI for this. You can come in and you can lock the block this way. But that's if you could. You also have the ability to turn it off manually as well. You can manage locking blocks in a pattern. Like if you're defining a pattern with code, you can lock them that way, or a template. You can do it that way as well. But there's no built-out UI for this. Yeah, cool. Okay.
I was going to say, in some ways, this is the opposite. There was a UI for locking, and now this is like more accessible for in code. So it's like it's got actually
Yeah,
going the other way.
it's all the locking that you've ever wanted to do as a block developer, because you now have complete control over when and why you're locking, and that's the important part. Like you can now say, I want this to be locked if it's after a paragraph block, and if it's an image block that's followed by a paragraph block, like you can literally traverse the tree and get all that sort of stuff. And really, like if the post is locked, then lock my content. Like there's all kinds of edge cases that we could talk about to do that, which is really exciting. So this is just a fun little powerful tool. So the next thing I was going to show is we have some modifications to two blocks that are under the hood utilizing the Interactivity API, which is super exciting. The Interactivity API, I think, is targeted for 6.5 to be public, but it's actually in core, it's under the hood, it's private now. But so core blocks can have access to it. So the first one is the image box, or the image block. So it's very straightforward. You just insert an image block like I've done here, and then over on the right-hand side, you can come down here and click on expand to click. And what that'll do is when you click it, it will pop open like this. It's very subtle. It's a very nice little effect, but that is done entirely via the Interactivity API. And it's going to be very, very cool when we as developers have access to that stuff. Oh, thanks, Justin, for dropping that. So it works with galleries as well, as you can see here. Again, I don't have nearly as beautiful photos as Nick and Justin do on their demos, but okay, I should work on that. Something to note is that you can actually with the Lightbox option, you can actually not navigation. Where am I going here? You can actually come into the styles and the in blocks, and you can set it globally for every single image. So every time an image block is set, you can have that turned on. And then if you would like to opt out, you can do it on a per instance basis in a post or a page or whatever, or you can obviously do the opposite as well. The next one is, so the query loop block now supports client-side navigation, which is super powerful because I don't know how many times I've heard this, but if you have two query loops sitting together on a page and you click the page, it loads the whole thing, and so you lose the ability to paginate this while keeping this the same. So this is just basically, we can click on this and we can change the page in here, and if I really want to keep this on page 3 while going back to page 1, we can do that. Super powerful. Again, it's powered by the Interactivity API. To enable it, we just need to come into the post, edit, grab the query loop. Down here at the bottom, we see enhanced pagination toggle. So you can toggle that on or off to get the desired effect. Yeah, I kind of went through that quickly, but they're fairly straightforward, but if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Marco is asking, will we have styling options for Lightbox, like color? Yes, thank you, Nick, whatever your name is. Thanks.
Yeah, my WordPress, yeah.
Fabian has a question about the mode. So this is a React hook that sets the value. Is there a way to get the current editing mode, the current block? Yes, that's a great question. You should be able to call it without passing a mode, and you will get the current editing mode, if that makes sense. So yeah, so if you were to just create a const, say, you know, current editing mode and call this without passing anything, I believe what it's going to do is return the particular thing. Now there is another function that I think is called get editing mode, but it's not a hook. Get block editing. It's probably not in this package actually. It might be in blocks. I have seen one somewhere that there is sort of a get version of this, but you should be able to get the current value without having to pass the client ID.
There is a selector, get block editing mode.
Yeah, perfect. There you go. It's not in the, is it in the block editor, or is it in the blocks package? Do you know? Is that
I'm
even
just
the
seeing,
thing?
I can find out. I'm seeing it
Get
in the
block.
original PR, so
It might not be exposed either. That could be the other issue. It may not be exported, but you should be able to get what you're looking for that way. Yay, maybe now we can add a little more customization. Cool. Well, that was it for me. You've got about 7 minutes. I'll stop sharing if I can find the button. There we go. So if anyone wants to add anything, ask questions about anything we talked about, or want to add something of their own, that's why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more to WordPress 6.4 that we
Yeah.
were unable to cover. So if there are things that you want us to look at right now, we can do that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
It's fun.
fonts.
Sally, don't mention fonts.
Who brought
don't
that up?
mention
Who brought up fonts?
Sally.
Just kidding.
No.
Just joking.
I believe the fonts manager was is going to be in WordPress 6.5 now, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, there were some very reasonable concerns around the implementation of it and some additional things that needed to be done.
Yeah.
So given the short time frame, it was moved.
Yeah. I do want to share this question about the group rename option, because that's actually something I meant to bring up. So is it in the list view? I literally have not tried this yet. I don't know how to do it.
I think I think you, yeah. I think that's
there we go.
Yeah.
So this is me learning live. So you can add a group. Let's just call it big picture section. Okay, if I can spell. All right, so that is actually saved. I'm guessing it's saved under the hood.
Yeah.
Look
at code view, you should be able to see it.
Yeah, code view. So we get a little metadata up there. And this because it's saved in like the block markup, it's actually would be transferable to patterns that you ship with your themes. So that's really cool. And yeah, something to be excited about.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. If anybody's seen like super complicated nested, like a lot of times, like when you're building like a card layout, you'll have like a group and then another group and a couple more groups. And, you know, from like a user perspective, it's like, especially like a new person is like, what are all these groups? But you go in and name them, be like outer container, like picture, metadata container, or whatever. And it provides a little bit more of a nicer user interface, especially for complicated stuff. So,
yeah. I do want to mention on the kind of jumping back to the fonts, we still have the ability to add fonts and register them through theme.json. We just don't have the new management UI is
good
what
call.
we don't have. Yeah. So like if you are not quite caught up to that point, you can definitely add fonts for your clients, for your theme users, directly through theme.json.
Rich has a question about dealing with heavily cached patterns. I believe the answer is probably to use the WP development mode constant, or a combination of that along with the standard development constants. I dropped the link in there now. So in 6.3 there's a new const defined as WP development mode, and there's some options in there. I believe that's probably going to be the best way to handle it. Usually when I develop, I have debug set to true. I have scripts debug set to true, and I'll have development mode set to whatever I'm developing to, and that should take care of the caching. But if it doesn't, let us know, because we need to know that.
Yeah. Another question. I'm talking out loud to the question I was just reading. Or the statement. With adding a background image to the group, you can also add it to the row or stack, which are technically variations on the group block. So yeah, you can definitely do that.
Hi, Rich.
One thing I do want to note for those in the audience who are educators or content creators, or who traditionally are using like the latest WordPress theme to create content. So one of the unique things about 2023, or the current theme before 6.4, is that it did not include a functions.php file. And so those of us who are creating content for others, that was always one of the first things when you started want to add functionality. Okay, go and add the functions.php file. 2024 has a functions.php file and a lot of cool examples, especially around block styles. And so 2024 is awesome. It's really comprehensive. It covers a whole bunch of different use cases for how somebody want to build a WordPress site. So if you're a theme developer, if you're an educator, if you're trying to think about how to build block themes, I highly encourage you to take a peek at 2024. There's a lot of standards kind of built into that theme that are really good to just copy. So if you haven't built a block theme before and you're looking for a place to start, 2024, in my opinion, is fantastic. It's a great starting point. And it includes a lot of that stuff like a functions.php file, how to register block styles. It's all kind of in there. And it has a ton of patterns. So you can see so if you go to 2024.wordpress.net, you can see the live demo. You can see all the different patterns that there are, full page patterns. And you can see how 2023 was great for this purpose that it served, but 2024 is so much more robust. It includes things that you might want to see, for example, an FAQ, and this is using the new details and summary block, and has some cool styling around the icon here. I think we have pricing tables, things like that lots of websites need. So if you're looking for design patterns and ways of block composition to create designs that most websites might need, 2024 is an excellent resource, especially if you're just starting out with block development. So definitely wanted to shout that out.
Yeah, there's one other link I definitely want to share because we didn't talk about it. But you can set the minimum and maximum viewport widths for fluid typography. I'm just linking the ticket. It's seeing it in the chat. Yeah, I don't have a demo set up of that, but it should be pretty straightforward if you work with the fluid typography system already in theme.json.
Yeah, and honest, really, we only have an hour here, and we're just kind of tip of the iceberg of what's included in 6.4. So again, next week the field guide will go out with more information. Just for completeness, we'll share Anne's source of truth document again in the chat for people who want to check out a much more comprehensive overview. But it's shaping up to be a very exciting release. I think I'm honestly most excited about the 2024 theme and just how much it includes for folks. When is the next meeting? Justin, do we have a final date for that?
We do have a date. We just don't have a sign up ready. It'd be will be November 2nd. That's at 1500 UTC, I believe. But we should get that up soon. That will be a developer hours meeting where we will have a couple of guests who are doing a presentation on the design and development of the 2024 theme. So it'd be great. It'd be a great time to ask questions. There's a lot of new and exciting stuff in that theme. Probably should be following best practices. Or I think we have patterns. I think we were talking about their block styles even included in this one. So it'll be a good chance to like actually ask questions of the people who are working on the theme. So we'll try to get a link up to that really soon. And I hope everyone can join us for that too.
That will be a good one. All right, well, we are just about past time here. As always, Ryan, Justin, and I, and Rich, we're very accessible on WordPress Slack if you have questions or need help with anything, especially some of this new stuff. Again, as a reminder, for those interested in the block hooks, the dev note will be out next week with more details there and some of the codes as well. And this recording will be put up on WordPress TV after it compiles and whatnot, and then it will eventually show up on YouTube, and we'll put the link in the meetup event so people have easy access there. So thank you everybody for attending. And actually one quick thing. So Justin mentioned that our next session is going to be what's called the developer hours. So this is termed hallway hangout. So they're very similar, but what we're going to be doing, our team moving forward, is we're going to be doing a developer hour once a month at minimum or more. And then we're going to be holding a hallway hangout once a month at a dedicated time. And so keep an eye out for that. Again, those will be posted in Meetup, and we'll probably also do a make post about these events. And the developer hours will be very presentation oriented. We'll have a guest speaker, or we will be a presenter ourselves, and we'll present on a specific topic. These hallway hangouts are designed to be much more conversational, talking about a variety of topics that are very timely for the WordPress project, whether it's a release or whether it's a new feature in Gutenberg that's being developed. A lot of stuff is happening in WordPress. We're moving into phase 3. And so those are really good venue for us to talk with you all in the community about new things that are coming. So keep an eye out for both of those sessions as we get them scheduled out throughout the rest of the year. And we hope to see you all there. So thank you all for attending. And again, we hope to see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. That was a good one.